Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to continue on with our journey of moving into the sixth dimension, which we're calling 6D, which means that we're moving into more of a unity and love consciousness. And we talked about yesterday how we're not going to fully be in that place just because we have polarity in all the different realities up until we get to probably 11th dimension. So just as a kind of a review, we talked about how we probably every higher self, the spirit of everybody and everything and all the trillions of universes, if you were to put it all together as one, that would make up, let's say, a oneness field, or you could call it God or source. And so we decided as a oneness field to have many different experiences from hate to love to see what it was like. What's it like to have an experience with a vibration more aligned with hate? What's it like to have an experience more aligned with love, and anything in between? And so if we have 11 dimensions, Earth is in roughly 3 to 4, and we're talking about we talked about yesterday how we're in the birth canal moving into a new era. And I think of the 5th dimension as being more of the birthing canal. It's the separation between the 4th and 6th. And the 6th dimension is more about the middle realms, which is going to be a much higher level way of looking at life, but it still is going to have polarity. And so we can capture those different belief systems and the ways of feeling and behaving in the 6th dimension by actually asking that we are downloaded with those energies, that because we have many realities going on with our own individual soul in many places, past, present, future, at the same time that we're living this current reality, we can also ask that different higher parts of our own soul help bring us to these higher ways of knowing. So for example, if I wanted to move into, let's say, out of this birth canal, yesterday I actually did a visualization, and I'm going to have each of you do this. Like, where am I in the birth canal? Am I like out? Is my head peeking out? Is it like not? And so yesterday in the morning, I could see like part of me, part like this much was out. And then when I looked this morning, I was back down. So, my baby's like this, So it's not like a straight moving out. So it could be that we as humans, we need a little help here, because it's like, what's it going to be like moving out? What's it going to be like being in a whole different place? So I just think about that. If any of you who've had children, you could see that sometimes it took quite a while before they came out of the birth canal, and some of them weren't that excited about coming out at all. So, everybody's got their own timing on how fast they want to come out of it. Some people are more excited to come out, whereas some people are a little more tentative. And there's no right or wrong on it. It's just a matter of, what kind of personality did you choose this time around? So kind of what it looks like to me, we decided as a planet, or you could say humanity, to do this 6D together. And so some people are taking active roles, like all of us are, to move into the 6D and really be it. And some people may be more of what I've been calling the lesson givers, meaning that, at least in this particular lifetime, they're not planning on being in 6D. They're here to, in a sense, push all the buttons that represent our core issues within us, which is collective-based as well, so that we're able to move into the 6D more easily. So you got to have somebody, because we're a polarity reality, that's going to be the one that's going to help us through reinventing the things that we as a humanity have struggled with. So kind of what it looks like to me is that, let's say that I'm deciding to plan my life. So I meet with a council. This is what it looks like to me anyway, and for too many people, that we decide to meet with a council, which I think of as more friends and colleagues, those souls that really want to help us, move to this next level. And so let's say we say, okay, I'm going to meet with my friends. We're going to all look at all the different lifetimes that I've had. Like, what past lives have I had that I didn't quite wrap up? All right, what seems to be the theme that's the most difficult that I need to wrap up? A lot of us are choosing the most difficult themes because we're finally in an era where we can wrap them up. And so we might say, okay, I'm going to look at, let's say, being misunderstood and loss. Let's say that those are the two things that you decide you're going to pick. So those seem to be the hardest one. It's like I feel like I'm misunderstood and then I lose people in my life because of it or for other reasons as well. So let's say that's the thing you're working on. So you look at, you can see that theme is in all these different past lives, and it's real predominant, hasn't been worked through. Then I'm going to look at the simultaneous lives, which means that there are lifetimes that are going on right now at the same time as the current one. Since we have trillions of universes, we have a lot to choose from. You know, we're only looking for the ones that influence us, though. So let's say that I see that, okay, which ones of these simultaneous lives fit this theme that I haven't resolved in these past lives of being misunderstood and lost. Okay, it looks like I've got 10. I have 15 past lives, I got 10 simultaneous. So I've decided I'm going to work on that. Now, when you get to this council, there's really no time or space. So you think about, well, why is something past and why is something simultaneous? Well, everything is based on my own take on it. So everybody's got to go in their own intuition on what feels right to them. But to me, past would be something that basically is resolved, but there's some little odds and ends that you haven't really worked through yet. So a big one that I've noticed that people haven't done to work it through is that they may not have crossed over completely. So there could be a part of their soul essence that's stuck in that reality, and I see that quite a bit. It could either be, let's say if we take the misunderstood one, in Bloss, let's say I've got, let's say 15 past lives that I haven't resolved yet. There could be, let's say 10 of them where there's a little part of my essence that hasn't crossed over. And let's say that all 15 have somebody I've been with that hasn't crossed. And why haven't people crossed? I think a lot of it is that we have certain expectations on what life should be. So if you're brought up thinking that there is some sort of a hell that is there for us, then you may feel that you didn't do well enough to cross over. You may feel that you don't trust that there's something good there. Like if you have a lost thing or misunderstood type of an issue, you may have thought that, geez, who's going to understand me there? I don't know if I'm going to dare go. I feel comfortable in this in-between spot. It's kind of like the birth canal. I'm comfortable in this known place. And so that can be like the wrap-up things in a lifetime. Like lack of trust is a big one, not trusting that there's anything better. And you figure that our brain, we really think that everything is permanent on some level. The brain just doesn't really get that, this is just a little tiny experience out of trillions of universes. It's not the lifetime. And I think that's where we get hung up as a soul, or I shouldn't say a soul, our soul gets it, but as a personality as we come into these lives. So because we haven't crossed over, we still carry the angst and the problems from the lifetime. So I look at all these things and say, geez, I really need to get going on moving this stuff over. And it's easier to do it when you're incarnated, because it's almost as though if I'm working on my own past lives, I have somebody here in this human life and somebody in the higher realms that are helping, and the lost soul is in between. So it's almost like it's almost like a sandwich. You got the human life, you've got the afterlife, and they're in between. So if you can have somebody here like pushing up to the light with somebody on the other side, it seems to be more effective. And so that's why I focus so much on crossing people over, because it's a lot more effective when you have help both here and on the other side. So the team says, the council, okay, we've got your life planned out here. You're going to go focus in on this misunderstanding and loss. Loss is a big one for you. We get it. It's the human thing, so you're going back. So then you come back into a lifetime with ancestors that also fit that same theme. And so we've got the theme going in the ancestor too. And typically these ancestors have the exact same theme as the life, because a lot of them are the same souls. And so you figure that we've got a lot of the same souls that are in all these lifetimes in the ancestry. And it's kind of like an astrology chart. I see it, to me, I kind of visualize, everybody has their own templates. My template for it is the ancestors on the mother's side are off to my right, kind of in front of me. The ancestors on the father's side are kind of towards the center. And then I always ask for the soul group to come in, because the soul group are the actors and actresses in our plays that are in all the different lifetimes, either incarnated together or helping from the other side. And so I think of them as the troupe of actors and actresses that are the most significant. Those are the ones that are going to be either the most supportive or the most difficult as well, because somebody who is in the soul group is going to make the biggest impact on your change in your life. So we're going to for sure have those souls there. And if they're a major lesson giver in your lifetime, it can be really painful, because they're such a close soul to you, and you really do love them, even though they might drive you absolutely crazy, you know. And so they'll take the major lesson giver roles for that reason. So I always see them kind of off to my left, but the straight, and then I see the interlocking soul group also kind of more towards my left center. And those are the souls that we have many lifetimes with, either incarnated or, you know, either incarnated or on the other side, but we don't have all our lifetimes with. So if this is your soul group and this is another soul group, they kind of interlock. You know, they have a lot of lifetimes together. So that's where I came up with that one. And then we have our past lives. I see them kind of on my left, and then I see the simultaneous lives on my right. So it's really good to get your own template down on how you see things. Everything that your intuition comes up with, I believe, is in symbols, in templates. And so you have to really know what they are, because it's easy to take things literally. I've learned from experience that things are not always exactly how they're shown. They're just to give you an idea of how something works. It doesn't mean that that's the answer or the literal interpretation of what's being shown. So you kind of learn that the more you get your intuition. So you're born into a lifetime, and you have your astrology chart, and then you have these soul contracts where people come at certain times in your life and to see kind of to take their role. So as we're doing this, all of the actors and actresses in our play are typically there for each other, to, at least in this era, to help wrap up this third to fourth dimension. And so it's going to be more challenging. So the birth canal is going to be really challenging right now, where you might feel, we talked about yesterday, that head pain and the eye pain. I've noticed it kind of coming off and on. I might be fine for most of the day, and all of a sudden this intense kind of pressure in the, kind of almost like a sleep mask is going on in the eyes, and then there's intense pressure on the top of the head. And so that may be something you notice, or you might notice a lot of digestion issues, because there's a lot of fear going on with this type of a transition. And so what we want to do today is kind of go over, or at least this morning, is go over some of the things that I've noticed that are kind of specific to this ascension process, particularly what I've noticed in 2017. I do think that starting in 2012, we've really started entering this 6D more fully. And so I was telling you last night, initially when I saw that 2012 was a big kind of catapult into 6D, I thought, oh good, we're kind of passing through the gateway into it. But I think really what happened, and maybe we'll talk about it later as a group, but really what we did is we're passing into working on all the issues that we need to be able to be in 6D. And how long is it going to take to get there? I really don't know. I think time and space is really difficult to determine, because there is no time and space ultimately. And so when somebody says, well, how long is it going to be? I can't tell for sure. I always say, well, it doesn't seem that long. You know, it's kind of anticlimactic, but you know, there's not much else I can say. But I figure if we're in this birth canal, that we're actively working on being in that state. So what does that mean? It means that our thoughts, our brain is going to be shifting into a whole new way of thinking. And yesterday we did with our guided imagery kind of an exercise, and I started seeing this really not that long ago, about 2 months ago, where there's a woman that came in, and her son was having some severe problems. He was only 18 years old. He had bipolar, real severe bipolar. Plus he was transgender, he was thinking he was. And he had some major addiction issues. And so this, poor boy and the family were really struggling. And so understandably, the mom, who was doing quite well considering all that's going on, she was going through a time with this, you could say, birth canal process, where she felt like her head was always hurting. It's almost like she could hardly contain the energy that was going on with her head. And so when I looked at her, what I noticed was that it almost looked like all these cords, or almost like your brain could have these little plugs in it, and that these cords were going to all these different places, like different belief systems of the ancestors, different beliefs of the past lives, the simultaneous lives, and anything collective as well. So it was almost like every single plug-in in her brain was being activated, to almost like screaming at her, it's time to let go of this old stuff. It was almost like acting as a poison in her system. And she thought that maybe she was like backsliding. You know, a lot of times when you're going through something like that, you feel like you are backsliding. But it's really not the case. Usually when you're feeling the worst is when you have the biggest breakthrough. So you have to remind yourself of that. So, and then it almost looked like too, okay, they got the plugins going to all these realities, and then it looked like there was like a root system going all the way through her whole torso and even into her feet. So it was almost like the plugins, or to these different more negative things, were creating almost like a patterning in her body. Now this was what it looked like to me. Somebody else might have a whole different visual on it. So it's not, it doesn't have to be a literal thing. Probably she didn't have these little plugins, going to all these places. She probably didn't have these little root patterns, but it fit how she felt, and it fit something that you could work with so that you could remove it from her energy field. So what she did was, when she was getting the energy work done, we worked on her unplugging her brain from all these different places, and then she would remove the root system that went with it. So she, let's say, unplug herself from, let's say, the family mental health problem that was in her family, because she didn't have mental health or addiction herself. But typically what's going to happen is you're going to have lifetimes where you have and other people have had these addictions or these mental health issues. A lot of times people are sandwiched in between, like let's say a parent will have addiction and mental health, and so will a child, and so you're kind of in that sandwiched in type of thing where, if you didn't resolve it with your parent, all of a sudden you could have a child, that has it. And so what she was really doing when she was unplugging from all these places is she was helping not only herself, but her whole ancestry. And so I've been noticing that we're ready to start, in a sense, letting go of the connections with our brain and the patterns it's created with all these different, let's say in the case we gave the example, the misunderstanding and the loss. So I can start moving all of that out, and there's going to be subtitles with it. Like maybe people misunderstand me, for example, because let's say they have their own traumas and their own addiction and their own mental health. Everybody's got triggers, and so people are going to misunderstand. So perhaps it's about not taking things personally is the ultimate resolution. So that we're, if I think that it's all about me and that people should understand everything I say, for example, then of course I'm going to feel misunderstood, because that's not possible. And so let's say the soul comes in to learn that it's not all about, me and what I think. It's perhaps that we're all going to think differently, and that's okay. The misunderstanding is going to be a part of life. Loss is going to be a part of life. The brain doesn't like it. That's the challenge. The brain thinks differently about it. So in actuality, by unplugging, we're helping our ancestors. We're helping the lifetimes that we've been in as well. So if you look at that, we're unplugging from that, so that's going to help us move more into the 6D. And then also I was seeing with her, and I've seen it with some others, and we did it last night. So we're unplugging from these things, and so we can almost envision coming, let's say, a new template coming into the brain, the head, the eyes. That is, let's say, a totally new circuit board, a new plug-in system. Is that really what it is? Is it really a plug-in system? Probably not, but you could think of it as an energetic interpretation of it that works for, when we want to work with people. So I just pictured, and she pictured too, that this new template, which is a blueprint or a new circuit board, was going in her head region and in her eyes, and that we were asking to plug into things that were more helpful to her. So let's say 6-dimensional, which is the beginning of the middle realms. Then let's say we decided that she's going to plug into all the different ones, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, let's say. Probably 6th and 7th are going to be the ones that she's going to be able to use more, if using this lady as an example, because the body, even though you can get some input from, let's say, the 8th, 9th, and 10th, and 11th, our bodies probably are not going to be able to hold that vibration very well, because right now we're at, let's say, 4th. We're 4th dimension. The body isn't going to be able to just boom be part of something much higher, because the body hasn't been made that way. So we're incrementally helping our body shift by making these changes. So any of you who've been in, working with me long enough, you can probably see we repeat a lot of the same things, maybe in different formats. And the reason why is because it does take a long time. It's not going to be an overnight thing. We may even be shown different ways to do the same thing over time because we're ready to do it a little differently. So we may start out, let's say if we take the example of the plug-ins with the brain, it could be, you know, initially in the past, we would just bring in, let's say, a download of energy to start moving things out. So we're just asking that our brain is moving things out of the brain. So we might have just even pictured, let's say, clouds of smoky energy, let's say, moving out. So that, let's say that's the beginning part. So your brain is just kind of filtering some things out because that's all it can do at the time. And so we keep stepping it up, and then let's say we start seeing that we can actually remove, let's say we're seeing like a oily residue moving out. So let's say that's step 2, you know, that's happening with the brain and body. And then all of a sudden we're unplugging from the circuit board. So it's like, okay, we're making a little more progress now. We're ready to really rock and roll out of that birth canal into the 6th a lot more fully. But even once we've done that, our body has to adapt to this new way. And so the good news is I kind of estimated, and again, this is an estimate, that we're probably, as far as people that are moving into 6D right now, at least on our planet, probably 10 to 15%, let's say. But we talked about last night that, you know, not everyone's going to do it here, but let's say other realities, I'm just going to make this up because there's trillions of universes. Let's say that I'm a part of, I'm going to say a small number because it's easier to comprehend. Let's say I'm a part of 10 realities that are in different universes. Let's say I'm really moving into 6D in this one. Well, out of the other 10, or the other 9, let's say, I might be only moving into 6D in, let's say, 1 or 2 other ones. Let's say I'm not moving any further in these other 8 realities, but the people that are seeming like stuck and not working on themselves here, they might be working just great in the ones that I'm not. Because ultimately, because we're all interconnected, we all have to make the shift. We can't leave this reality without everybody going together. And so you figure, we looked at it earlier, that if we're all part of a oneness field, we're really all one. So you can't leave somebody behind ultimately. You can start stretching out of the reality before others do, at least in this reality. But ultimately, I think we are all moving to the 6D somewhere. And why is that? I think that we've decided as a collective that this is the time where we don't need to learn the experiences that are lower anymore, that we've already kind of worked through those. And so some of you may be wondering, like, what's 1, 2, and maybe even 3? Of course, we're 3 to 4, but what are those realities all about? And those of you that do energy work yourself, you may see them as like lower realm entities. I see them almost looking like the stereotypical winged ones. You know, some people think of them as the devil or something, but I don't really look at it that way. I think it's just like dimension, let's say 1 or 2. You might see them as just a dark kind of an energy or creature kind of a thing, or however you see them. So you could say that we're remotely tuned in to something lower that's ready to shift up and move out. And some people become afraid of the lower realms. They might really be actively afraid, but I figured that we all have a little part of our soul that's in these lower realms, so it's not really that scary to me. I mean, perhaps it was when I was younger, but I think of it as the human shadow side, that we're really ready to wrap it up. And there's like it's almost like when you look at a movie or something that I think of it as a movie type of a thing. Like, okay, let's say if we're in a movie and we're in this reality and there's these, you know, we always have these creatures or these, you know, bad guys that are in the show or the play. Well, they're playing a part, and I think that ultimately they're ready to move up their vibration too, because it's a fragment of the soul of somebody else that might be doing great things somewhere else. So I think about the first time I started thinking about how we're all interconnected was really with somebody in my soul group, and a lot of you have heard this story, but probably when I was about 31 or 32, I was having a really hard time because my dad was a major lesson giver to me. So he's was a very close, or is a very close soul to me, and so I was upset with him, and so I was meditating, trying to get over the anger, and all of a sudden his higher self shows up in front of me and says that I volunteered to be your lesson giver in this lifetime. And I'm thinking, like, what? And so this was a long time ago. This is probably almost 30 years ago. So I was listening to what he had to say. It came in so profoundly, and I said, well, what does that mean? And he said that that you wanted to work through a lot of things in this lifetime, and you needed somebody to deliver the kind of the script, so to speak, or play the role of the lesson giver. And I volunteered to do that for you in this lifetime because you needed somebody, and we're very close souls. And he said, I only have a very small part of me that's in this role as the lesson giver. He didn't use the word lesson giver, but that's my term now. Most of me is off doing great things in other places. And so that was my first shocking experience. I mean, you know, being somebody that young, it really took me off guard, because this was back in like 92 or something like that, 1992, when nobody thought like this. Nowadays, people are thinking more along these lines. But so that was my first journey into recognizing that things are not what they seem. So the people that are playing either these lower realm entities or the major lesson givers, they're doing it as a temporary role. They're an actor or an actress in our play. And so I figure that we're all as a collective deciding to wrap up that lower realm role that we've all chosen. Even if you're somebody that has well-intentioned and loves other people, you're still going to play a lesson giver to somebody, because we don't always say things in the right way, and somebody may take it wrong and get triggered. Well, it's a lesson for them, and you may say or do things that are interpreted a certain way, even if you have really good intentions. Or you may have things unresolved within yourself, so your thinking isn't as optimal as it could be, so you think a certain way, therefore you reject people based on your outdated thinking. So that's one of the things we want to work on today, is to unplug more fully from these old thoughts, because I think that the beliefs, which turn into an emotional state in our body, which can turn into physical symptoms, that they can be the thing that really causes us to not do well in life. So it starts, I think, with our outdated thinking. And so where does this outdated thinking come from? Well, we're born into a society that thinks like this. We're born into a family that thinks a certain way. We make up our own beliefs based on our experiences. We think that because we've attracted people that fit our lessons that we've come to learn, that maybe everybody's like that, which isn't the case. So we create our own thinking and also inherit a lot of thinking. So we were talking about yesterday is to act like we know nothing, so that we can start clearing some of this old stuff out. So what's a fast way of doing it? Well, one of the things is this unplugging. But the other thing I've been noticing this year was something that I started calling an original seed of creation. Again, this doesn't mean this is a literal thing, but what was shown to me was that we all, let's say when we were the oneness field, everything was the oneness field. And when we first decided, I'm going to make a holographic image of self and, let's say, bring it to all these different trillions of universes so I can learn what's it like in all these places, that before let's say the Big Bang happened, let's say the duplication of the field happened, we still had kind of the seed of our self. You know, it's even though it's a hologram, we still had a seed of what we were that was still accessible. And so I've been seeing that the seed of what we were before it turned into these different universes and timelines is still accessible to us. At first I thought it was an orchestrated walk-in, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I realized it was just our natural essence, which was almost like this natural essence of who we are was walking in to help us. Like we each have a little seed left behind of our soul essence before it went into all these different realities. And probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5, I started talking about kind of a template for the universe where there's, let's say, 12 different types of universes that have different core issues attached to them. And one of the 12th universe, and I'm not going to get into the details, but let's say the 12th universe I had talked about as being like the pure state of existence. Like we have some of the universes are more of a pure kind of loving state that are almost more neutral in nature, which is kind of similar to the original seed of creation, but it still has gone into some existence of sort. It's chosen. We may have some universes that we're in that have chosen to be more of a supportive, neutral place, where we can access that to help us here. So we can have all sorts of definitions or wording on what things look like. But so we're going to do some work with the original seed of creation in a little bit to be able to move into the seed of creation that we all left behind, so that we're able to access that. And some of us are noticing more on orchestrated walk-ins that are more about moving into the 6D living. Just a kind of a brief review for some of you who don't, maybe haven't heard a lot about it, is that what I was shown probably in like 2003 or 4 was that, again, let's say we're meeting with our council to plan our life. And so let's say, I'm just going to use the examples over here, so hopefully, can you turn, hopefully, let's say that me and Lucy and Nancy and Kelly, let's say the 3 of us decide as souls that we're going to come in together. And that let's say that I'm the soul that has more experiences with the earth realm. So I have a lot of karma to work out, at least in this earthly place. And so I'm going to come in first, incarnated into a body, and work through all my karma. And these 3 are going to be my guides. They're going to be my spirit guides. And they're going to help me work through this. And none of them have ever been, let's say, on planet Earth before. They've been in other places that have different frequencies and things going on. But so they have a different perspective, a different energy system than those that have been on Earth a lot. So once I work through my karma to a point where it seems to be kind of more complete, then okay, all right, I think I'm done now. The plan is that Lucy is going to trade places with me. So Lucy's going to come in, I'm going to exit. I'm going to cross over, clear the problems from that life, and then Lucy's going to step in, and I'm going to act as a spirit guide along with Nancy and Kelly. So now it's going to be me, Nancy, and Kelly that are spirit guides, and Lucy's incarnated. What's the reason? Why would you do something like that? Now this is an interpretation on my part, but because we're trying to shift all of these different realities more quickly, because Lucy hasn't been here before, she's got to put a whole different energy system in this physical body than has been here on this planet, which is going to help shift our thinking here more quickly. It's going to help move some of the old thinking out of the body more quickly. It's going to give me more new gifts and abilities and so forth. And so let's say that Lucy's like, okay, I really don't need to do that very long. I'm just going to do it for, let's say, a couple of years, okay? So Lucy's saying, okay, it's done. I've done what I need to. So Lucy's going to step out. She's going to cross over, clear all the things from that life, and come back and act as a guide. And Nancy's stepping in. And she comes from a completely different place than Lucy. So she's bringing in yet other, more, she's infusing some frequencies and belief systems and gifts that have never been here before. So all of a sudden we've got 3 different, types of systems that are woven into this physical body to make it shift more quickly. And so let's say that Nancy's like, well, I really don't need to do a whole lot here. I'm going to just come in for, let's say, 6 months to a year. That's all I need. Some of them stay a long time, some of them don't. So let's say she gets all the energies infused in, and then she exits, crosses over, cleanses the life, comes back and acts as a spirit guide, and then Kelly comes in. And Kelly's like, okay, I've never been here before, but I really have this certain thing I want to do here. I'm going to be the one that's going to have the mission, let's say, to finish up this lifetime and really make an impact, because I have certain gifts and abilities that I've used that I think can really help this physical self here live the 6D more fully. Not to say that these 2 don't either, but they may not need, let's say the reason why they came in may not be the same. So that's what we can move over here again. That's pretty much what my interpretation is of the orchestrated walk-in. So, and I'm seeing that more of that is happening again. You could say that Kelly, who's the one that's coming in as the last one, some of those souls are coming in now, along with this original seed of creation, to shift into a much higher level of doing things. So why not just keep the original seed of creation, or why not keep this, what we're talking about is kind of that slice of the universe that's more neutral? Why not just use that as the template? Well, my understanding is that doesn't have any guidance on how to actually do things. It's more of a state of existence. It's more of a reminder of who we are. You could say that 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th dimension are going to be the ones that actually have some existence to them to help us live something different. And a lot of you have seen me talk about this before, but A lot of times there can even be a lifetime that we've had in, let's say, these 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th dimensions that specifically helps with what we're doing here today. Then those different aspects of us may come in to help us. And as an example, some of you have heard my talk about, in 2002 I had a hypnosis session with Dolores Cannon. And kind of what I did was I asked her, she's somebody who's pretty famous for her hypnosis sessions. She just died a couple years ago, but she was a phenomenal woman and talented. But so when I went to have the hypnosis session, I asked her to bring me to a lifetime, whatever one it is, where I could understand my purpose more fully. Like, why am I really here? So she brought me to a place, so the intention was that, and I ended up being on a different planet kind of lost. So what I could see was I saw myself kind of floating down in this, it almost reminded me of kind of a space suit of some sort. And I was floating down, and I had somebody with me that was there too. We were floating down into the planet, and I was lost and confused on where I was. And she asked what I was doing there, and she said that, I said that me and my comrade were trying to, we were people that would scout out other planets to figure out where people could be incarnated and make sure that the planets had, you know, let's say good agriculture and water and the atmosphere was correct for that person. And I was an Arcturian, which is you know, from Arcturus in this lifetime, and that everything was by telepathy. So I had a hard time talking about it because there was no words in this place that I came from. But basically, I had used numbers. I said in this hypnosis session that everything was about numbers, codes, and vibration. And so I had miscalculated where I was supposed to go, and I ended up in a place that didn't have any agriculture. It was like a barren place. It was almost like little shrubs. It was like nothing there. And so I was just beside myself in this hypnosis session. Because I had been doing this post for, you know, probably maybe, you know, 1,000, 2,000 years, whatever it was. And so we went to, me and my colleague, which ended up being a friend of mine, she actually, I ended up doing a guided imagery on her, and we determined that she was my comrade. And both of us had this kind of guilt complex about not being fully able to complete our mission. And so this part of me, which I would say was the 8th dimension, even though I was very gifted and talented, there was still something that, you know, still had some polarity to it. Like I felt like I needed to be perfect or complete this thing exactly right, and my friend, we determined, had the same kind of complex. But at the same time, this energy of the Arcturian is something that can help me here because I really had a lot of skills and so forth. So that was a lifetime that I lived that I've actually asked to kind of bring back in to help me here today. And so just one more thing about that. So she brought me to this realm that was called, I called it the Elder Realm, was the words that I used. But I started calling it Galactic Elder because I think that that's more Native American. The Elder sounded more Native American. But I went to this Elder Realm, and there was this beautiful being there that I saw, like a symbol, like a moving symbol that represented the realm. It was this really amazing and kind of encodement. And that there was no words, but basically this being said, and I interpreted it wrong, I think, when it said it, kind of that misunderstanding thing that I was using as an example actually was in this particular example. They said to me that basically because you feel so bad about it, you really need to leave your post and go work it through in this lifetime. So I remember thinking, I was, you know, that, oh God, I have to leave my most exciting post and go to be a human. I was not very happy about that. But basically, the kind of the message is that we're all, you know, nobody's going to be perfect. That we're all, even in these middle realms, we're working through different things, but we all have different gifts and abilities in all these different realities. So we can access those things and use them today. So I'm seeing more and more of that happening, that we're accessing more and more of these, mostly 8th and 9th dimension, but somewhat 6th and 7th, so that we can navigate in a different way. So that's one of the things that really has come out and stood out, is this whole thing about upgrading ourselves. And I'm just going to look at my notes here to see what else. Oh, the other thing too that has really been showing up a lot is that there's, like with going back to the guilt, for example, I've always got that guilt and unforgiveness of self is the glue that keeps us coming back over and over again to this reality. So if you have guilt and if you haven't forgiven yourself, you're basically not allowing yourself to be freed up from this place. So everybody's got some of that. And so one of the things that I was shown just recently is that guilt, it's almost like you could say there's an amoeba or parasite that's connected to guilt and unforgiveness and other emotions that we haven't cleared up. So it looks to me almost like with candida, anybody who's had like a systemic yeast problem or any sort of candida problem, they feed on sugar and you crave sugar if you have a candida challenge. So it's almost like the yeasty beasties are saying sugar, 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 and you just almost like you just have to, you're just like going towards it. Now if you don't eat the sugar, if you take some things to take care of yourself, the yeast is going to die off and you're not going to crave sugar anymore. In fact, you might not even like it. So it's almost like there's something in your system that's wanting to keep it going. So with the guilt, I was working with somebody who was struggling with guilt, and I noticed this parasite, that was in her system. We started almost asking that the guides with her higher self directing were removing these parasites. So she was visualizing all these different parasites moving out of her body, the guilt parasite, the unforgiveness. It was almost like it was showing all the way through her. And so one of the assignments I gave for her, and it could be an assignment for myself or anybody, was to go through every day and see what kind of different, you could say, energetic parasites are there for yourself, particularly guilt and unforgiveness, since they're such a big one that we all struggle with. And so you can make it a daily practice then to like unplug from these different places, bring in the new circuit board, clear the root system, clear out the parasites, ask for these new energies to come in. And I'm actually going to give everybody a handout tomorrow on different things that you can do, because we're going to go over things that you can do in your everyday life tomorrow. But you can do a whole practice on just to continually remove these things. You may not see them the same as me. You might say, well, I don't see the plug-in system. You might see something different, which is great. It doesn't have to look the way I see it. And so one of the things that I've noticed about 6D is to be able to really start using your intuition more. And one of the traps you can get into when you start looking at your intuition is that, again, people initially especially take everything literally. So, you might get this hit that you're supposed to, let's say, date somebody or do some sort of job. Let's say, I'm really supposed to take this job. It feels so right. And then you get there and it's like, oh my God, everybody there is like my mom and dad and my siblings. And you're like, why did I get that for? And then you think, I'm never trusting my intuition again. But basically, that you were supposed to go there, that's the whole idea, is sometimes our intuition leads us to karmic things because it's the thing that we need for growth. I think that our higher self has a different idea of what good is than, let's say, the personality. To us, the good is that, okay, you get a chance to free up from this thing now. This is your perfect opportunity. If you stay here for a couple of years, you are going to be just cleared of all this stuff right now. So why wouldn't you want to do that? So that would be the higher self's definition, whereas the personality, likes to have things stay the same. The brain doesn't like change that well. And so the brain is going to say, well, that wasn't comfortable, so I don't really want to follow my intuition anymore. Whereas the higher self is like, what? Come on, that's exactly the thing you're supposed to do. So we need to start, that would be the 6D or plus thinking would be more aligned with what the higher self would want, which would be, it's not like we're looking for problematic environments, that's not it at all, but we're following what really feels right at the time. And that's part of the 6D. So how do we know we're following the right thing? Typically, if it's the right thing, you're going to feel really, your heart may open up, you feel light, and you don't feel stressed about it. You feel really glad that you're doing it on some level. It just feels, your body and your brain and your heart just kind of feel like you're in alignment with it. Then you really know that that's the right thing. Whether or not it works out the way you think or not, it's going to be the right thing for you. So you want to really pay attention to those things. And because we're going through more things to move into the 6D, you want to start keeping a lot of supportive people around you. So that's why I like doing these type of groups, because basically when you're doing this, if you're in the everyday world, like people will say, you know, there's not a lot of people that I can talk to about this. They probably would think I'm crazy, and geez, I just kind of keep it to myself, and I don't know where to go with it. Well, if you come to a group like this, you're able to share even the things that seem the weirdest, and people don't bat an eye because we're all in agreement on it. But what I have found too, just doing a lot of traveling and so forth, that most people are kind of open, you know? Like I'll sit next to somebody on a plane and they'll start talking about things and I'll start talking about things, and I find that people are more open-minded than you'd think. And I think it's because the critical mass shift has really occurred to a certain point, you know, where we can start talking about more things. And a critical mass shift really is when there's a certain percentage of the population that has already reached a certain level of growth, where it kind of tips it over so that everybody starts becoming more open. So we were talking about yesterday about how much more open-minded we are about people having different skin colors, different gender preferences for a relationship. You know, you don't have to marry somebody that's in the same class as you. You can, you know, men and women are starting to be able to do more of the same things. I mean, it's not like we're 100% there, we're not. But you can see we're inching our way up. And the reason why is because of those people who have dared to think differently, dared to say, you know, I'm not going to follow that anymore. And then you get enough of those people and it shifts things. So that's what's happening right now, is we're in a great time to really start sharing what we think. So, you know, I figure that if you're bringing kind of these new ideas to, let's say, the workplace, you know, you just dip your little toe in there. You can say a little something, and that maybe is all you need to say to somebody, you know, as far as new thinking goes. And if they bite, you can talk a little bit more. And if they don't, you know, at least you planted a seed. So I think we're going around now being seed planters, which is really exciting.